Hey there, LBT Squad. I'm your host, Alex Pop. If you're just joining us, we're on our way to Memory Lane with the new upcoming movie, The Land Before Time 14 Journey of the Brave, coming out this spring. And this is the beginning of my review series on every one of its predecessors. The Land Before Time is the adventure that started it all. This movie was produced by filmmaking legends Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. Don't worry, this is pre-Jar Jar. And directed by Don Bluth. He started out as an animator for Walt Disney Pictures before he went on to do his own films. These include classics like An American Tail, The Secret of NIMH, and All Dogs Go to Heaven. Most seem to agree that after the 80s, Bluth's career as a director went really downhill, although I still find some redeeming factors in Anastasia and The Pebble and the Penguin. But his masterpiece, in my mind, is The Land Before Time. Released in November of 1988, that's 27 years ago this weekend, The Land Before Time became a worldwide hit, outgrossing Disney's Oliver and Company, which came out on the same day, and it spawned an outstanding 12, soon-to-be 13 sequels, as well as 8 video games, 2 sing-along videos, a TV series with 26 episodes, and dozens of copycats. It was one of the first movies that I ever remember watching. And since young age, I, like most kids, was really into dinosaurs. In fact, I don't know which came first, my love for The Land Before Time or my love for dinosaurs. Either way, one had an effect on the other. If you're following my channel, you've probably seen most, if not all, of these movies, but just in case, I'll let you know right now that these are going to be in-depth reviews, so a spoiler alert is in order. The movie begins underwater as we watch prehistoric aquatic creatures swimming around. Not much can be said about this scene except that it starts the movie off on a calm note with soothing, dreamy-sounding music. And this is the first thing that stands out about this movie. The score, composed by James Horner, may you rest in peace, friend. All of it is absolutely breathtaking. It is far up there with the score that he wrote for Titanic. I can't even decide which of the two is his opus. I have every single note of the soundtrack memorized, and it describes the harrowing tone of the movie flawlessly. After the title, we're taken above the surface to a land in the prehistoric age, where we really see the artistry of Don Bluth. The animation is crisp and fluid with a nice earthy color scheme, and some amazingly skillful detail on little things like the sand wind and the moon's reflection in a lake. It looks so lifelike. You can always tell that something is done by Bluth by the animation. As we're told through narration by Pat Hingle, a drought is occurring and several herds of dinosaurs are headed west to find an oasis known as the Great Valley. They're stopping only to hatch their young. One of these newborns is an Apatosaurus named Littlefoot, and as he hatches from his egg and cuddles with his mother, there is an immediate mother-son connection that is just so strong. And when I watched this movie back in 2012 for the first time in several years, this one particular scene really gave me the feels. I thought about what happens later in the movie, and I thought about everything that Littlefoot goes through throughout the series. And watching this scene with those thoughts, and all the while thinking, wow, this is really him, as a hatchling, with his mother, it just really hits me right here. I just sit there going full Matthew McConaughey. So one scene later, Littlefoot is older and able to talk. We're never told exactly how long it's been, but it's short enough that they are still a long way from the Great Valley, and short enough that Littlefoot's mother is just telling him about their journey, during which she gives him the last star-shaped leaf, or tree star as they call it, from as far as the eye can see. When Littlefoot asks her how she knows the Great Valley exists when she's never seen it, she replies, "Some things you see with your eyes, others you see with your heart." This was another very memorable scene for me, as her words are one of many themes in this movie that contain spiritual undertones. So Littlefoot starts to wander off and comes across a family of Triceratops, including a female hatchling named Sarah, spelled as it is in the middle of the word Triceratops. Littlefoot starts to play with her, but Sarah's father, the most racist dinosaur in the series, puts a stop to it. As Littlefoot continues the journey with his mother and grandparents, his mother explains to him that the dinosaurs have a prejudiced behavior toward each other nowadays. Very early the next morning, as Littlefoot chases a frog, he encounters Sarah again. They play together briefly until a ferocious Tyrannosaurus Rex, known to them as a Sharptooth, attacks. He almost has them before Littlefoot's mother comes to the rescue. In a very intense fight by kids' movie standards, she gets bitten and slashed at a few times, but eventually throws it off a cliff with a few beats of her tail. But at the same time, a massive earthquake triggered by the collision of continents opens a ravine, separating Littlefoot and Sarah from their herds. After it's all over, Littlefoot finds his mother languishing. He tries to get her to stand, but to no avail. Under the last of her breath, she asks him if he remembers the way to the Great Valley. He asks why he has to know if she's going to be with him. She tells him that she would be there even if he couldn't see her, but he doesn't know what she means, as he can always see her. Her final words to him are, "Let your heart guide you." It whispers, so listen closely. And then she fades away. This scene is so heart-wrenching that I can't watch it without getting tears in my eyes. That in this movie was one of the first things that brought to me the concept of death. And it seems that Littlefoot didn't know what death was either before his mother died. Being a very young kid, I was sure that when Littlefoot finally reached the Great Valley, he would find her there waiting for him. But he didn't. When my mom explained to me what really happened, I was kind of haunted. I thought about how Littlefoot had to make that long journey without her, and as a kid, it was tough for me to wrap my mind around that. It's for this very reason that I'm so defensive of children being smarter than they're often given credit for. So Littlefoot, sad and confused, meets an old Polacanthus named Rooter, a character who was added in to help ease the emotional blow of the previous scene. Littlefoot tells him why he's so depressed and that he blames all of his pain on his mother. Rooter then explains to him that it's no one's fault and it's part of the great circle of life. The Lion King came second. His character motivations are sort of ambiguous because he's very understanding of Littlefoot's pain, but after explaining things to him, he just leaves without another word, and the series hasn't heard from him since. I've always seen something mysterious about that guy, so at this point Littlefoot can only think about his mother. He forgets about his hunger and the long journey ahead of him. There's even this little scene where a baby pterodactyl offers him his cherry. Right, you're reviewing. Right. Later, though, the tree star his mother gave him floats down toward him as he hears her heavenly voice speaking to his heart. As he looks into the drop of water in the tree star, she reminds him to follow the sun and watch for the landmarks. But Littlefoot's still not yet ready to make the trip. Later, however, he meets up with a sweet and innocent Saurolophus hatchling named Ducky, who has the catchiest catchphrase of "Yep, yep, yep." She's also voiced by the late Judith Barcy, and I'll just say now that I felt ill after finding out what happened to her, but that's another story. So despite the racial issues among other dinosaurs, Littlefoot still offers for Ducky to come with him to the Great Valley and find her parents. Now, if there's one small nitpick I can make at this movie, it's this. When Littlefoot learns that Ducky was separated from her parents during the earthquake, he immediately invites her along for the trip to the Great Valley. But this is that moment when he realizes that it's time for him to start his journey. It would have been more effective if for a moment he had turned the other way, maybe took a deep breath, and had contemplated the fact that he now has responsibility since he knows the way and she doesn't. That would have been more realistic considering his circumstances. Soon after, they run into a clumsy and panicky pteranodon named Petrie, who is aviophobic and is yet to learn to fly. Littlefoot and Ducky invite him to come too. Now, Petrie has always been a favorite of mine. A little bit of his logic and goofiness always makes my day brighter. There's this one part where he's on top of Littlefoot's head messing with his tree star. "Oh, mother present. Very important. Oh yes, me save it. Let nobody's touch. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Always cracks me up. Now, The Land Before Time has been compared most with Don Bluth's previous film, An American Tail. So here's how I'd compare them. These last few scenes in the movie succeed in lightening the mood after the death of Littlefoot's mother, so the movie knows when to be upbeat and when to be emotionally stirring. This is a bit more what An American Tail should have been like, because while I'm not saying that the movie is bad, it was so endlessly depressing that it's hard to imagine kids getting into it as much as The Land Before Time. It did have the same writers as An American Tail, so I guess they may have listened to reviews that reacted the same way I did. So anyway, as Littlefoot tries to give Petrie some good air for flying, they run straight into Sarah, who claims that she woke up the Sharptooth from the floor of the abyss. As she brags about how she bravely came to warn them, she accidentally flings Ducky into a clump of grass where a Stegosaurus, or Spiketail, is just hatching from his egg. Ducky names him Spike and tells him to come with them to the Great Valley. Spike swallows up all the grass around his nest, and then he joins the group. Yeah, he's the fat one who loves to eat. Isn't there one in every gang of friends? He also doesn't talk, and actually, come to think of it, he doesn't do a whole lot at all. But I kind of like that about him, because I tend to think that Spike was written in to be relatable for handicapped or disabled kids who are among a group of friends. So the 5 hungry dinosaurs set off for the Great Valley, Littlefoot leading the way. According to the narrator, there had never been such a herd as 5 dinosaurs of a different species together before. Fortunately, before starving to death, they find a single small tree that still has vegetation. Petrie is still too scared to fly up and get it, so they pile themselves on one another to go up and grab it. Sarah remains isolated from the group, but at nightfall, one by one, she and everyone else all gravitate to Littlefoot's side, knowing that without his help, they'd never make it. Yet another particularly memorable scene that is filled with heavy atmosphere. The entire series should have more scenes like this. The next morning, they are suddenly attacked by the Sharptooth. Yes, somehow he survived the fall into the abyss, who steps on Littlefoot's tree star, crushing it to bits. But they manage to escape from him and come across the first landmark, a rock formation that's shaped like a sauropod dinosaur, or longneck. Beyond this, they climb up rocky hill after rocky hill, wearing themselves out. Sarah grows impatient of the trip not seeming to go anywhere, and she starts to leave. But Littlefoot protests, leading her to insulting his mother, and so a confrontation ensues between them. This is another relatable scene that shows that despite Littlefoot's many good qualities, he's not perfect. So Sarah's the victor, and the others agree that her way is easier. Littlefoot continues in the direction that he was told, while the others follow Sarah. But her route leads them through a string of volcanoes, where Ducky and Petrie get endangered by lava, and Petrie gets trapped in a tar pit. Littlefoot turns around and goes after them, and manages to save them, but when they find Sarah, she's unable to bring herself to admit that she was wrong, and leaves them in tears. Later, the kids spot the Sharptooth nearby, and determined to avenge his mother, Littlefoot formulates a plan to lure the Sharptooth down into the water underneath a boulder overhead and drop it on him. As Ducky distracts the Sharptooth, Littlefoot and Spike start to move the boulder, during which the Sharptooth lets out a blast of breath, giving Petrie just the boost he needs to start flying. And as Sarah runs back to help them, her strength gives them just enough to successfully move the boulder off the cliff and drop it on Sharptooth's head, defeating him. Afterwards, though, Littlefoot begins to lose hope of ever accomplishing his journey, but then the spirit of his mother appears, and she leads him the last few steps up the hill, where a beam of light from her spirit shines down, revealing the Great Valley in an absolutely glorious single frame. Sarah, Ducky, Petrie, and Spike soon join him, and they all run home to their families. Ducky introduces Spike to her parents, and they adopt him. Petrie gets to impress his family with his newfound ability to fly. Sarah reunites with her father. It's never said exactly what happens to her mother and sisters. That's kind of sad. And Littlefoot meets up with his grandparents, who take care of him from then on. Littlefoot flashes back through memories of his mother, and then joins his friends at the top of a hill, and they all share that ever-famous group hug. And finally, the credits roll in with the theme song, If We Hold On Together. More classic James Horner right there. Even today, the characters in this film are like friends to me. The movie, as well as its successors, develops them so well that any young kid can easily identify with one or two. And this is really how I felt as a kid. When I was lacking friends, I had Littlefoot. When I needed a laugh, I had Petrie. Like I said before, there are a lot of notable spiritual parallels in this film that resonate really strongly with me. Even though Littlefoot's mother wasn't present, he knew that she was still there with him through all the struggles of his journey, and he knew that he and his friends had to stay on the right path, even when the right path didn't make sense. The journey to the Great Valley is a metaphor for life itself. Sometimes it's filled with joy, other times it's so hard that you feel like you can barely breathe. But whatever the case, you still gotta press on to get where you're going. And even looking at it from a critical standpoint, the simple story, the brief 69-minute runtime, and the structure that makes it feel like kind of an odyssey make it work as an introduction to moviegoing in general for young kids. And at the same time, the movie respects them enough that it doesn't sugarcoat its dark and edgy elements. In the end, The Land Before Time is a triumphant masterpiece of animation that still holds up the same as when I had this emotional and childhood-defining experience for the first time. Though I still enjoy most of the sequels, the first one tops them all. It's my favorite animated movie of all time, and it will stay with me for the rest of my days. No doubt here, I give The Land Before Time an A+. Congratulations, Don. You really got me. Now let's go to some comment reviews from LBT Squad members. Brian Butler said, "The best of the series, a compelling story, and one of the films to feature the voice of the late Judith Barcy. All in all, a recommended movie, A+. And Mikey1393 Drago said, "For me, the first Land Before Time movie is the best out of all of them. It has the darkest atmosphere out of them all, the most adventure and peril, the most time difference so far, and the best dark story with an otherwise happy ending. I know since the first movie, the songs were added to make the others more child-friendly, but I still think they ruin the official stories. So I give the first movie an A+. Well, I don't have a calculator with me, but I'm pretty sure that means your grades average out to an A+. We all agree, an amazing film. And now I'm on my way through this review series. Stick around soon for my review on the first sequel, The Land Before Time 2, The Great Valley Adventure. To share your opinion on this movie, leave a review as well as your letter grade in the comments below and have them featured in the video. That's a wrap for now. If you liked this and you want to see more, slap the like button, subscribe for future videos, and follow us on Facebook. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Alex Pop. Catch you later.